Hello everyone. So welcome to the Social Collider. And just a quick introduction, Social Collider is an aggregator of resources for social enterprises and impact organizations. So how do we do that? We use the triple co philosophy of co-working. So right now there are 23 social enterprises housed within us. Right? Some are here, some are not, some will be staying overnight. Right? And then with collaborative with partners like yourselves, and of governments, higher institute of learning, as well as, and then we come up with co-innovation solutions. So these are some of the ways that we work with, and if you think there are possible ways that we can work with, please connect with me and happy to link you up with the social enterprises housed within us. So I'd like to invite today's panel. Right, first up we have Mason Tham from Garden Impact, right, CEO of Garden Impact. Okay. So I'll get them to introduce themselves shortly. Okay. And then we have Jierong from RAISE. RAISE is the Singapore Centre for Social Enterprises, and they advise social enterprises on the advisory from the Ministry of Social and Family, where they advise social enterprises. Finally, we have Wayne Chia from the Innovations Lead from Asia P3 Hub. Right, Wayne, please. Okay. Can we hear without the mic? Is it okay? I think we have one mic, so just leave it here. Oh, actually we have two mics, so probably you can take one. Alright, so probably we'll get Mason to introduce Garden Impact first, right?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mason. I'm actually part of the Garden Impact team. Garden Impact is actually a homegrown social impact investment company that we focus on investing in sustainable social enterprises in Southeast Asia. We've been around for almost 7 years. We have made about 10 investments in the region. So that's basically what I am. I will share a bit more about projects later.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Chia. So I'm from the Singapore Centre for Social Enterprise. This is actually a government-linked entity that was formed through the cooperation of TOPO, Ministry of Family and Social Development, and NCSS. So we were formed in 2015 to be a focal point, right, to support social enterprises. So in a way, we are a sector developer and membership body for social enterprises. Currently, we have approximately 350 members, and we provide a range of services to our social enterprises, from awareness building to capacity building support, and all the way to providing financing options like grants, equity, or convertible loans and debts.
Hi, I'm Wayne. I'm from Asia P3 Hub. Asia P3 Hub is a multi-sector partnership incubator. Now, that's quite a mouthful. So what we really do is we bring companies, NGOs, and governments together to solve poverty issues. So we incubate partnerships. We don't incubate companies or projects. Actually, we incubate projects. We don't incubate companies. Because when we say incubator in this space, in Singapore, it means something else, right? Because we understand that poverty is fundamentally a very complex issue, that you need all stakeholders involved together to solve it.
I think it's great, and we have a wide spectrum of experts, professionals. So we'll ask about 3 questions, thereupon open to the floor. So if you've got questions, please keep them in mind, and then we will get the experts' advice. So my first question to you, right, to the 3 panelists, what does corporate giving mean to you, right? And how can corporates give back in a sustainable way? So I do know that we are sector developers and enablers. Nonetheless, from your point of view, how do you think corporate giving can make a more sustainable impact? So maybe we can start with Wayne.
Mason, would you like to start first? Before I joined Asia P3 Hub, I used to have a very different understanding of corporate giving. And when you say corporate giving, you kind of think that it's either in cash or in kind, right? Or you say the 3 T's, time, treasure, and talent, of which it can include volunteering as well. But after I joined Asia P3 Hub, my mindset changed. Just a bit of background which I may have missed out. Asia P3 Hub is actually hosted by World Vision, which is an international NGO. So after studying the giving space quite a bit, I realized that my definition of giving today has changed. As long as there's someone on the other end benefits from some form of good, in my opinion, that's giving. Some of the best forms of giving that I have seen are those that cost nothing from the corporates. Those are one of the best. So I'll give an example, right? World Vision Australia partnered with Jetstar. Very simple partnership. I'm sure all of you guys have seen it before. At the end of the flight, we collect loose change from you. Simple, right? Qantas does that with UNICEF as well. If I got my numbers right, I think they collected about 7 million million Australian dollars at the end of 8 years, right? Now my question is, who gave? Was it Jetstar? Technically no, right? It's the passengers that gave. But would it have happened if not for Jetstar? Answer is probably no. Did it cost Jetstar anything? Maybe just a little bit of the stewards and stewardesses' time at the end of the flight to collect the money, right? But that happened because they started with the intention to help and to give. And their biggest giving actually is kind of like introduction, their channel. They open up their channels to their customers. I know a lot of banks, I know some of you guys are from banks, quite a fair bit of banks do that. Sometimes they do it officially, sometimes the relationship managers do it unofficially, right? They just link one of their high net worth clients to one of the NGOs. And that in itself is a form of giving. And it's over.
So, I think giving is quite a mouthful, the word giving. And so, basically when you look at the whole spectrum, at RAISE, we see three kinds of entities that come to us. You have at one spectrum the charities, who are entirely giving. They really want to volunteer their time to support their clientele and beneficiaries. And as charities, right, they want to be sustainable, and they come to RAISE to see how they could be more financially sustainable. So where RAISE comes in is to help them to provide consultancy services or workshops on how to help them become more financially sustainable. And then we have the social enterprises, where these folks, right, are like the millennials, or people who want to give back. And to them, they want to incorporate both giving and sustainability into their practices, into their business practices. Then at the other spectrum, I've actually met corporates like Frasers, even MBS, who actually approached to us and talked to us about corporate giving and how do they want to improve their corporate giving. And from the corporate angle, there are actually three kinds of corporate giving, at least in my opinion. One is strictly from a CSR perspective, where how you could introduce some form of CSR intervention or programs that we can support, say, charities. But of course, this is a whole entire continuum. Another possibility is how we could support inclusive businesses or social enterprises. So this is another form of giving. For example, can I incorporate, say, a social enterprise into my procurement supply chain? One example of corporate giving that we noticed was ComfortDelGro acquired 40% stake in this social enterprise called Gobbler. And Gobbler's involved, right, in providing low-cost groceries, right, to beneficiaries. Another corporate out there was Spa Esprit Group. So these folks are involved in the spa business, as well as the F&B business. They own the Tiong Bahru bakery chain. So they actually have a stake in Edible Garden City, which is actually a social enterprise that does vertical farming in land-scarce Singapore. So there's an environmental aspect, as well as they employ persons with special needs. So by actually acquiring this social enterprise, right, they literally incorporate, right, giving into their entire corporate psyche. So that's the other spectrum of corporate giving we're looking at. So depending on at what stage you are, right, you can decide what type of corporate giving that you want to give back to society. Yeah.
So thanks for explaining. So I say but just to add on a different perspective. So as Garden Impact Fund is actually we invest only in sustainable social enterprise. So what we believe is that unless the enterprises are financially sustainable, they cannot deliver sustainable social impact. So I think that's very important. Not because you're a social enterprise, you do not need to be financially sustainable. So for us, that's very important. But what does that mean for corporate giving? Actually, there's a role for corporate giving even in the sustainable social impact investment. So let me explain, probably you've heard the term called blended finance. So what we have done is actually, for example, in Singapore, we invested in a call center inside the men's and women's prison cluster. So we invested in the business to help them to scale up. Initially, when we invested in them, they have only like 5 employees. Today, 5 years later, we have, as of end of last year, we have impacted 412 prisoners who walk through the doors, through our doors. So that's the impact measurement that we're looking at. But how does corporate can help? Plenty. We can donate in kinds like PC, laptops, even furniture. Because we're not advocating cash contribution. We want to see how you can play a direct impact in these people. Of course, we even work with people who want to help the families of the prisoners, like counseling and even stuff like that. But again, what I'm trying to emphasize is this. I think for each of you, you have a passion for different social cause. For us, we are merely a help to identify projects that are able to address social injustices, such like poverty, discrimination, okay, especially the handicapped people, especially the autism young adults, especially single moms. Okay, single moms, especially, is a growing problem in urban cities. Not because they cannot work, they don't have the capacity, they have to take care of the young kids, they have to work flexi hours, and often they double up as caregivers for the elderly in the homes. So we need to find jobs that offer them flexible income, a job arrangement. So that is our passion for doing that. So I think there's many things that corporate giving can play.
So in a nutshell, to paraphrase the 3 panelists, right, corporate giving can be in the form of a one-off, kind of just donations, whether it's in kind, whether it's in monetary, but it also can be sustainable in terms of the provision of employment and services to the disadvantaged communities. And these communities can mean from single parents to current prisoners, if we can call them, right, or youth at risk. And I think this is definitely one way, right, and also to move away from probably the traditional method that Tianyi was sharing earlier on the left spectrum, where probably it's just a one-off takeaway. Right? Maybe we can move away from that. So next question. Sustainability nowadays is the big word, right? Sustainability in a lot of things that we do, whether it's about climate, whether it's about things that we want to look for, right? And of course, sustainability it means differently to different people. So, in the consideration, how has your organization, right, take steps to work on the topic of sustainability? So maybe you can explain a little bit more what sustainability means to you, and then all to your organization, and what are some of the steps that you've taken or your organization has taken. So maybe we start with Jierong now.
So at RAISE, we are actually an intermediary, we're a sector developer. So we focus more on making sustainable social enterprises. Internally, I guess we try to be sustainable too. So what do I mean by sustainable is that because we have to walk the talk, we are a sector developer, we support social enterprises. So in our eyes, when we talk about sustainability, we've been walking the talk, for example, when we organize events, we organize conferences, we actually procure from social enterprises. Our F&B, our catering, we get it from them. We want an events organizer, we get from, say, the panellists, which is another social enterprise that employs persons from disadvantaged background to be our event organizer, and so on and so forth. So that's how we try to do, we walk the talk. But on the question of sustainability, I think I share my views with Mason. It's basically, from the perspective of social enterprises, not only must you be financially sustainable, because you have to be financially sustainable in order to drive social impact. It goes hand in hand. If you were to focus too much on social impact, say employment of beneficiaries, for instance, it may compromise, say, your productivity. For example, say you're a cafe. 100% of your employees are from the disadvantaged groups. I'm not saying that they are bad or anything, but maybe you're not that productive because you're differently able. You can only do one set of skill at any one point in time. And does that mean that but if I were to give you a full market wage, it could actually affect my gross margins, my net margins, I mean, and that will compromise your financial sustainability. So both has to go hand in hand. For now, that's it.
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay, just to add on, talk about sustainable investing. You need to be patient. Patient, I'm not talking about 5 years, I'm talking about 10 years. Many financial investors had the wrong view saying, oh, I'm using the private equity approach. 5 years, in and out. For us, we have to exit because that's our mandate to all our investees and investors. The question is, of course, when can you exit? In order to exit, you must be financially positive first. Then before the company can generate positive cash flow, build up cash reserves, or even there are potential buyers come in. But for us, one very important about sustainability is not just financial return, but social impact returns. For us, we want to look at jobs creation, whether part-time, full-time, it doesn't matter. Number two, the employees or the beneficiary must live in standard housing, not sleeping on the street or in the slums. And number three is, are the kids of the employees going to tertiary education? Did you know that in Thailand, only 16% of the kids that go to university? 1/6. So probably in Singapore it's the other way around.
I think looking at the global trends that mentioned by CND earlier, I think ultimately, right, sustainability will eventually drive profitability, because we are seeing this comes up in a generation shift where the millennials are the new consumers and the millennials are the new workforce. Millennials do not just buy goods and services, but they want to see what's the intent behind the goods and services. What are the practices behind it? So that's why it's very important to incorporate sustainability into your business model. It will eventually drive profits in the longer run.
I like the trend whereby we start from micro and we slowly zoom out, right? So I think sustainability means, I see this question, I get a bit scared because I think sustainability means very different things to different companies. If we take a macro global view, then there are a few frameworks you can say where sustainability is really in need. For example, in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 of them. It tells you where the world's biggest problems are. Then if I want to look at just the planet specifically, then there's the 9 planetary boundaries, for example. Again, some mega frameworks. Now the question is, how is this relevant to businesses? It depends really, because we don't know your business as well as you do. Of course, all businesses, your primary concern is return of investments for shareholders. Great, but if in 30 years' time there's no more planet to speak of, then your return of investments is not as valid anymore, right? So the question is, we are like, okay, I think we are overthinking this. Well, maybe not. We have hit a point of no return in terms of carbon emission, right? It's irreversible. So there are some things that are very real, right? I'll give an simple example. If you do dynamite fishing, there will be some, great, you may get a lot of immediate returns, but there will be some day there's nothing more for you to fish. So from a business point of view, what does sustainability mean to you? Does it mean a sustainable supply chain, sustainable workforce? If you have a very low standard of hygiene or cleanliness in your factories and all your workers fall sick, you are also in trouble, right? So profitability does come into play at some point in time. If you have been working in a very unethical way, as far as business is concerned, someday, some government, when the government changes, will come down and clamp down hard on you and you may lose your business overnight. In my opinion, that's sustainability too. So it really does depend what it means to your business. You will know your business way better than I do. But there is always an aspect where we have to see a bit more long term to make sure that there is still a platform for your business to be built on.
Wonderful. I really like what the panelists have advised. So just want to quickly share also when I was so I did my master's at Tsinghua University in Beijing, and it was on social entrepreneurship and sustainability as well. And of course, during that time, China was known to be probably the backyard of what the factories don't want, right? There was one point where I remember they were saying there were more than 2,000 dead pigs, carcasses, bodies that were floating down the river in Shanghai. So they were saying, oh, if you want to get free bak kut teh, just turn on the tap if you're in Shanghai, right? And if you were in Beijing, if you want to have a free smoke, just open the windows, right? Because it's so polluted. I remember when I was out on the streets, the PSI index was about 700. Yeah, you cannot imagine, you came back with, and then you just use a piece of tissue paper and you wipe your face and it was black. And moving forward, I think it has moved a lot, and one of the key things that I've learned also was that in the past, the branding of a company, or even now, or in the past especially, there was this word, it's called sharp, right? 尖, okay, which means, how do you write it? It's 小 and 大, like small and big, right? And in the past, businessmen were known as 奸商. 奸商, nowadays, it means very shrewd and cunning. However, in the past, the 尖 was actually this small, and it means sharp. Why? Because businessmen in the past, they used the example of a rice merchant. If you were to go to a rice merchant and you bought rice, they would give you the rice with a little bit more so that it became like top. So instead of just 10 kg, they give you a little bit more, maybe 10.5 kg. So that you would go and spread the word that, hey, this is a very good merchant, we should buy from him or her. Right? And that's why they call it 奸商. But as time progressed, 奸 became shrewd, became cunning, became bad. Right? It was because people began to cut short the ways. Right? They begin to be more, take shortcuts, right? Whether it's to, and then nowadays we heard so much where, whether it's in Bangladesh, where buildings burned down, and then because of people did not observe the ways that the workers were working. So coming back, I think sustainability really, like what Wayne mentioned, what does your company work on and believe in, right? And this is also one of the ways, are we going to be the 尖 previously, where people said, wow, this is a great merchant, or are we going to be the 尖 now, where no, we should not work with this particular company because they have they take shortcuts and it's really bad for the environment. And also, as much as I like to say, I also observe a lot in sustainability buying, although I'm not a millennial anymore, right? And I think many of us here probably also observe that, I like to believe. Okay, so one more question before we open it to the floor. What are some of the gaps that you see now, right, in the current sustainability efforts, and how can we plug these gaps? Right? So maybe I will jump to Wayne now.
Another big question. Well, I wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel, so I will always start by saying that someone has done a lot of studies and go just follow whatever framework. The UN SDG is definitely a good framework, planetary boundaries, and I think the biggest gap would be the ones that are relevant to you, in my opinion, right? So if you are I don't know, so let's say you do agriculture, so definitely anything related to water, related to environment, climate change will definitely hit home a lot closer to you than say something else, right? Because we are the guys who believe that everyone can contribute and different people play different roles. So I would say the biggest gap is the one that's the closest to you, the most relevant to you, and the one that you understand the most. Go do that and leave the rest to someone else, because there will be someone else who worries about life under the sea, for example. That won't be us. We support, I think, about 7 or 8 SDGs. There's no way we can support all 17. So the biggest gap will be the one that's relevant to you and you know.
I think okay, from a very theoretical viewpoint, I think all gaps have pretty much been identified. And the question is, who is plugging the gaps? So like from a government viewpoint, I mean, they are plugging certain gaps. For example, climate change. Like sea level is rising. Then, okay, do you need coastal barriers and this kind of stuff? These are billion-dollar questions that they have to think about. So then of course, at a corporate level, like what Arvind has mentioned, what gaps are there that has been created because of existing business practices that you've done. Like for example, I mean, just using say an oil and gas company for that matter, you extract maybe shale from the ground, say in the US. In doing that, right, communities are affected. So these are potential gaps and solutions that you need to address to ensure that they're sustainable. So it really boils down to what kind of gap that you have created, and do you plan to like plug it? Yeah, I think that's the bottom line.
I think the gap is too much data, too little action. Action requires take risk, okay? But I think the most important thing is find something that, okay, let me put it this way. We all talk about social injustices, but remember, that's not the problem of the government. It's also the problem of businesses. If every business is running socially responsible, you don't need social enterprise. Okay, so the most important thing is, let it not just be a hype or a talk show. I think honestly, the change of mindset, we should talk about even sustainable ecosystem. For example, are you using packaging that is destroying the earth? Very simple. I don't need to go and do corporate giving. Just review your corporate practices first. Start with something. But honestly, if the chairman of a company does not buy it, that's the problem. You all can do a lot of research, a lot of data, but if the chairman of the company, the decision maker doesn't buy it, too bad. You need to go and brainwash the person first. But at the end of the day, I realized that just remember, social injustices is also caused by corporate themselves.
Since we talk about government, let me talk a bit more about government. So, if you look at fiscal systems across the world, I mean, I use Singapore example because I was from there. So, if you look at, say, our revenue, we have a corporate income tax, personal income tax. I think if you look at the revenue side, taxes at most 50%. The rest is from net investment income from GIC and Temasek. There's only a limit to how much CIT, corporate income tax you can raise, because this is a race to the bottom. We're all competing on equal grounds. USA recently mentioned that they plan to reduce corporate income tax from I think 30+% to 20. So this is a race to the bottom. Personal income tax, cannot be regressive. It has to be progressive. But at the same time, you cannot increase that marginal tax rate of the high income earner because you want to attract them to Singapore. So what I'm saying is that revenue side, a bit tricky. Expenditure side, you have infrastructure, you have defense, you have huge social spending, aging population, healthcare costs is rising, and all kinds of social injustice that Mason has mentioned. So it takes the whole ecosystem to play its part. The government can do something about it. I mean, the government's a huge ESG player. I think so. But it's not just the government, but the government, the corporates, everyone coming hand in hand together to do something. Yeah.
Maybe I'll just come back. So now we're going the opposite direction. We start from big and go down small, right? So now I'll talk about the personal level. I talked about corporate level just now. I think on a personal level, the biggest gap is personal awareness and what hits home to some people. Unfortunately, you do see that some issues are overfunded and some issues are underfunded, right? So Notre Dame on fire. You have two billionaires that jumps in, throwing billions of dollars. We'll cut from our legacy, I don't know what fund. And we are like, the same amount of money can solve a lot of problems, a lot of real life problems. I mean, the church can build itself, right? But it's about the people, the church is about the people. But why are we not solving people problems? We are solving a building problem. I don't know. And it's this kind of issues. Certain disasters are overfunded, we know, right? World Vision handles natural quite a lot of responsive work as well. You will see like Haiti earthquake, overfunded, right? Oversubscribed. Other natural disasters, maybe too far from home, maybe it doesn't sound too sexy, maybe it doesn't show on the TV enough, nothing. So how do we solve that kind of inequality? That's something we need to figure out.
I think really this is things to take back. Although there was also an article that I came across about funding Notre Dame, and it's really what appeals to you. That's all. Yeah, it's really what appeals to you. Right, okay, so coming back, probably open this to the floor because in the interest of time, right? Are there any burning questions that we'd like to ask our experts and panelists? Anyone?
How do you change the mindset from top down? how do you change the mindset? Because you were talking about the chairman. No, it's a serious question.
For us, our approach is bring them to smell poverty.
Smell?
Bring them to smell poverty, meaning go and visit the project rather than reading from newspaper or hear people. Bring your chairman, go down to see the project and go through it yourself. Because no amount of reading, no amount of talking can convince it. Only the person when you walk through that project personally, then he can experience it. So like say for example, we invested in a call center in the prison. I said, okay, I don't want to do too much presentation. I just bring you down, give me 2 hours, I walk you through the prison, and then you tell me, are you impacted or not? That's it.
However, it can be a hurdle. I can understand that you bring the chairman or the top management to these
so I think so you have to find out.
But I think the hurdle is trying to get them there.
So first thing about you ask them, what are you passionate about? Right? Some people say, I'm very passionate about orphans. I'm very passionate about water, whatever it is, right? Because different people have different calling. But just find out first. Because if there's something, there's certain issue that touch him or her, you should start from that project. So we are very project driven, right? Because if the project doesn't touch my heart, I mean, it's just another charity, then sorry, I don't know how to convince my investor. Because the project, you must be convinced first. That, when I say convince means, because social impact investing is not for the faint-hearted people. Okay? It's like this, and go down, you know. But you must believe the cost of it. Because different people have different calling, right? Like I said, because maybe some person come from a very poor background, or some people have lost mother to a cancer. I mean, again, different people have different background. You just have to identify what is it. I mean, I don't have an answer for you. You really have to talk about, oh, maybe, you know, this person has a passion for autistic kids. So you just have to find out the calling. That's our suggestion, and bring the person to see the project.
Is money considered a calling?
I think, like I said, find a project first, easier to start communicating.
So there's also, of course, there's a saying also, if Muhammad doesn't want to go to the mountain, then you bring the mountain to Muhammad. Is there another way to but I do agree very strongly with what Mason mentioned, right? Especially top down, you really have to just show them, right, where it bites, and you know, the pain point, right? In Chinese Mandarin, they call it 痛点, right? Where is the pain points? And a lot of times, it's the pain point that really drives things forward. And just a quick one also, I think in recent years, there have been a lot of focus on children with autism. And I like to believe that maybe it's because one of our MPs, her son is autistic, and maybe that's why it drives. And then because of that, then she in turn drives this. So a lot of time, you want to talk about top down, it has to be the pain point. And what better way than to bring them to see the case?
Just to show you an example. One year, a PNG chairman walked down the beach holiday with the kids. On the beach, he saw some wasting. And there was a PNG packaging there. The children asked, Papa, why is this thing, PNG thing on the ocean? So he realized that this is my company product floating in the sea. 2 weeks ago, there's a news article in Indonesia, Indomie packaging, 15-year-old Indomie, 15-year Indomie packaging on the sea. People took a picture of it and say, what kind of company is this? The packaging is still in the sea. So you must, like you say, 痛点, must find a pain point that will make them realize, wow, this is my company. No, I don't know, like I said, I don't know what kind of business, but that was say, that's how the PNG chairman said, we decided to use all recyclable, so-called compostable and biodegradable packaging. You just have to find something like that. I don't know how to explain.
Sure. But yes, I think the overall view, right, just to bring the problem up to the front. So any other question from the floor?
clear. Yeah. Okay.
So earlier on, there was some sharing about what standards there are for ESG reporting. So as you assess the company, what format or what standard do you use actually yourselves? Or is it an interview with the founder, or is it like walking the ground and understanding, or actually looking at the report that's prepared using those standards?
You can hear, right? That's okay. Again, each project is unique by itself, right? So it's very hard to add all 5 projects and say what is the total. But I think it's more importantly, let's say agricultural project. What we're looking at is how can it benefit the farmers? How can we help the farmers to scale? Let's say instead of 1 ton per hectare, if I can help them to scale to 5 tons because of better seeds, better soil, that's also impact investing because it can help to do that. Healthcare sector, how do you measure it? How many lives can you save? How many so-called, for example, we invested in a rapid diagnostic kit for HIV/AIDS, malaria, dengue for the kids. So within 5 minutes, you're able to detect whether you're infected. Instead of villagers have to travel days to go to the clinic and do the test and come back. So it's disposable. So the number of kits that we sell is 1 million a year. So that's 1 million potential cases we can help you with. So there is no standard, let's say, used across it. I think each industry will have a different. Just like, for example, I talk about the prison project. It's about we impact 412 lives as a large. So currently we employ about 50 male agents and about 80 female agents in the Changi prison. And so what we equip them is when they leave the prison, they have a job skill that they can use after they leave the prison. What does that mean? It means they have income generation capability. It's meaning, even now we pay them a small salary, they are able to remit money home back to their family. So what is significant is an act of restoration of broken trust with the family members. So we do not just do output, but we also do outcome. How do you measure not just in terms of number of lives, but also how do you impact the quality of their output? So again, this is some of our measurement. I don't want to claim credit, but this we try to keep it simple. We don't try to have like 10 criteria. You know, if you don't have A, you can't do it. No, we don't do that. We develop the KPI as we go along with the investors.
Thank you. Maybe I can hear from the rest of the panel. Because what it's alluding to is actually all these global standards. Maybe we don't need to follow them because at the end of the day, if we just follow our course, then actually, right?
I personally believe you do not have to follow even the UN SDG 17 goals. Like, I find it too complicated for me. I don't understand that.
At RAISE, what we do is that we have something called social value toolkit that we co-develop with Bain & Co. This is a bottom-up approach where we actually sought feedback from, say, our social enterprises on what kind of indicators do we want to track. So our social value toolkit is quite human-centered because at RAISE, our mandate typically is to actually support social enterprises that support disadvantaged groups, either through employment or providing some form of subsidized goods and services to them. When you talk about this SDG goals, for example, because the methodology that we want, we do not want it to be very onerous. That's very important because social enterprises have actually they don't have much resources. If you just 2 or 3 founders and several beneficiaries, if you want to impose a very, very rigid framework to them, right, it's compliance costs money, and it's not worth it, to be honest. But what we do is that, say for example, we simply track how many beneficiaries have you employed over the past year? How many beneficiaries have you served or provided subsidized services over the past year? And typically some of these you can actually map it on the SDG, the social aspect. So you try to keep it simple and easy to use. Ultimately at RAISE we do the aggregating and report it to our stakeholders.
If you don't mind, just a comment. Like I think the feedback is that RAISE is very much focused on in ESG, it's on the social.
On the social.
Yeah. But how about E and G? Like, is that
so
not?
Environment is something that we are considering because we know that in the rest of the world, the focus is on the VOP, the bottom of the pyramid in Southeast Asia. But in Singapore, I mean the government does a really good job, right, supporting the disadvantaged group, the low income. So in a way, we don't really have a bottom of pyramid population. So to Singaporeans, environmental impact can be, to them, is a social impact. And this is something that RAISE is considering. And actually, our membership, our race members, right, do include environmental-based social enterprises. And for example, like 3 Dots, where they do say upcycling or recycling of food waste.
One of the fun things about impact and sustainability is I think usually it's less defined, so you get to define it. So single bottom line businesses, like most businesses do, right? Very easy. End goal, dollars and cents. That's the bottom line, right? Double or triple bottom line businesses get a bit great. So I will, in order of difficulty, usually I think S is a bit easier, at least because it's something I'm a lot more familiar with. Because usually S, social, you can boil down to lives impacted. Like what Mason said, it's either the number of lives impacted and quality improvement, if you can kind of measure it, right? So that's a bit easier, you can quantify. When you talk about environment, it gets a bit grayer. So for example, can you measure, quantify lesser carbon emission? Is that a percentage? Can you quantify less amount of plastics that were being used? And some of it is a bit harder to measure, like how do you measure reduction of plastics in the ocean? Like how? We don't really know, it's a lot harder. Governance is, some parts could be easy, some parts could be difficult. So for example, if we talk about increased transparency, okay, how do you quantify increased transparency? That's where it gets a bit more difficult, and usually as the organization yourself, you would be able to be very clear, like what exactly are we trying to do and how do we measure it? Because you as an organization would know, right? We wouldn't know. Like if you say usage of blockchain, oh, buzzword, great. What does that mean, right? It means that I can track one end to another and more number of transactions where I can trace the whole supply chain. Okay, I think we are getting somewhere. It's a bit more defined now. So it's entirely up to us.
So can I understand where you're coming from? Because very academic, the questions. Very good.
No, I actually am from the environmental space in renewable energy. So actually applied for RACE as a member actually very recently. But then the feedback I got, the last interaction is that it's focused on social. And I can your explanations are totally valid, so I totally understand. But we're a social enterprise serving, because Singapore is not, I mean Singapore is an island, but the climate affects the whole world, you see. So if we do projects in Indonesia or any other emerging countries, it actually affects us as well here. So, yeah.
Wonderful. I'm sure Jierong will take it back to race. Good one. So I think it's a great feedback, and really my takeaway is really it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. You cannot just say, oh, this is the matrix, and then we will follow it to the right to the dot, right? It's always about what is the impact, and then from there we customize a little bit more, tweak it a little bit more, the different KPIs. And also, to me, the SDG, right, I think it's really great. However, if you really unpack it, it's very African-centric. If you unpack it further, to me, it's very African-centric. So that's just some of the things. So yes, we do not. I believe we do not have to follow everything, right? Everything is always how do we customize it. So coming back, probably we have time for one last question. No? Okay, we have more time for more questions. Okay. So yes, please.
Oh, sorry. So my question is about how, because you mentioned over and under allocation of funds to different projects and different causes. Do you have any feasible solution, like a centralized sort of index that measures the performance of charities or certain projects?
Okay. It depends. So I'll say it depends. Like for example, for my parent organization, what they realized is that last time, because World Vision as an organization is very federated, so what happens was they started saying that we will start making we will start making consolidated efforts to make sure it's channeled correctly, right? So the reallocation of funds today, the entire methodology, I would say, is a lot more robust compared to years ago, and I think a lot of international NGOs are already going in that direction. But if someone insists that I want to give to this cause, can you say no? It's a bit tricky, right? You want to turn someone away because they know this cause is already overfunded. Unlikely, but usually it depends on the organization to say that yes, actually we are overfunded and we would like to redirect this funding to this cause. Is that okay? But if it's inter-organization, that makes things a bit more tricky. Sometimes you need a bigger governing body. I don't know whether it's the United Nations or World Bank, or sometimes some of the governments to come in to say that we need to reallocate funds differently. with my limited knowledge, I have to admit I'm not aware.
From a simple context, maybe, I mean, I'm just thinking that, like, no MEPC, right? Because MEPC looks like giving in general. I mean, I'm not sure whether or not MEPC could say, hey, look, maybe too much funds, too many corporate funds to say, spend resources on this particular area. He said, can there be some reprioritizations? I mean, I'm just thinking about.
Oh, yes, please.
I can, yeah.
So maybe just to give some sense of the word MVPC, so actually we are funded by the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, which supports 6 causes here in Singapore. So social services is one, there's healthcare, there's sports, arts and culture, education, and also environment. Because we're at a national level, so sometimes actually we're quite cost agnostic. If you have companies coming to us every now and then, or individuals, to ask, where should I give to? We don't actually tell them exactly where they should give to. Because it's a bit tricky when we are serving these 800 over charities out there. It's very tough for us to say, hey, you should give to this. Then how about that? And we do have the charities coming to us sometimes to say, how come we're not included in this or that? So typically we actually empower the donors themselves to decide. Because when you give or you donate or or volunteer, there's always sort of a decision-making process in your head. Be it because you want to give to the cause that is that's most requiring of impact or need, or is it because you have a personal kind of affiliation? So I think it's very important that the donor or the volunteer themselves, the giver, actually know why they are giving and then select the causes or charities based on that. But that said, we've also been trying to identify how can we bring together collective action? So actually in the last year or two, we have been getting companies, even organizations and non-profits and government agencies to come together along to kind of look at specific cause area like elderly, children and youth, as well as persons with disabilities, for them to really study. And because the answer is always in in a group, right? And they actually are able to pull together kind of data and also intelligence around actually where are the real gaps. And collectively as a group, that's when they also decide, hey, actually, certain places have always been quite overfunded. Why don't we all look at something else? So a very good example of that, one of the collabs program we did, we first actually started by looking at the topic of children and youth. And children and youth is so huge, right? What is it in children and youth that you actually really want to give to and is most in need of help? And actually, there was also a little bit of slant to it. It was education, children and youth. But actually, as the whole entire group of companies and organizations, they went along the journey, the learning journey, they discovered that actually is sort of like the early childhood that needs more help. Because when you look back, a lot of the donations out there in education and in youth goes to like tertiary scholarships. And it's nice, right? Because you're always helping the next generation of people to change and so on. But then you don't actually notice that there's actually some help out there that doesn't actually have issue salience. But once you actually flash that out, you help the group understand where the gaps are, and collectively they can decide, oh, knowing this gap, do I still want to give somewhere else, or do I want to then contribute to that? Yeah. So that's what we do. But if you have new ideas and all that, please come and tell us about what you think could be better for the whole entire ecosystem.
Thank you very much. So, and it is true that probably there is an imbalance in the way we channel our resources, and we can't be helped. Right? You cannot be totally equal. A quick example, let's say if I ask you, what do you want to volunteer with? Or what do you want to volunteer? I think most people will say, oh, children, animals, right? You'll find that the elderly is very, not many takers, not many people want to do that. And even with our own time, it's like that. What about resources then? Right? So it's always what appeals to us. So whether it's Notre Dame or a different cause. So even though I agree with Wayne in saying that maybe there are other causes, it's really what it appeals to you, right? And of course, sometimes appeal can also mean what we are exposed to. So top-down approach, right? And I think what Shireen mentioned earlier, where they recognize the gaps and they try to bring this awareness. So again, awareness is something that is always about out of sight, out of mind. And as much as we try to do things, sometimes we're just swept away by the current trends that's happening in society. So we're very mindful for enablers and aggregators of resources to try to maintain the balance. Right? So in the interest of time, I have one last question for the panelists. What is the advice, what is one piece of advice for people or for corporates who want to embark on this corporate giving and or ESG? What is one piece of advice that you give to them?
I always like to say look beyond the obvious. So there are many ways to give. Some of my favorites are the less obvious ones, like introductions, sunken costs. That's another way, or spare capacity. Those are ways of giving that sometimes doesn't cost you much, but can have a lot of impact. I can cite you quite a few examples on that. Come approach me if you want to find out more.
So my advice is look at the strengths of the organization, and after that identify your business processes. What do you think could be creating some form of a negative impact, say, to the social environment? And then from there, right, once you identify the problem, then you focus on the intervention. And of course, I mean, just to be a marketing at Race, right, we do actually provide workshops, so we work closely with corporates to help you, say, go about reviewing your CSR strategy holistically. So I mean, this is one of our mandates at Race.
For me, it's actually, I think what Wayne has been emphasizing is about looking at reviewing your current company ecosystem, whether it's procurement, whether it's outsourcing, see how we can be more inclusive, and getting the people. Like I said, it is very important that your chairman or whatever your CEO must be very passionate about the cause first, because otherwise, if you think do away with straws doesn't matter to him, then no matter what you do, it doesn't matter to him. I don't know how many of you still use straws at Starbucks anyway, but I think the thing is about, I think you must get your decision maker to buy in first. But start in a small way. Don't be too aggressive. Start in a small way, and like maybe instead of using plastic cups, start to use mugs. I don't use water bottle, plastic disposal anymore. I carry my container. Something that will actually be more friendlier approach. And I fully agree. It's the millennial generation say, I want to save the earth. I'm dealing with a lot of family officers. Imagine when I present my project, the patriarch, which is 70 years old, and the millennial generation have different argument. But this is life. You have to learn to speak their lingo. The patriarch, 70 years old, say, I don't care, I make a lot of money. Don't touch my wealth. Millennial generation, I want to give away. So how do you reconcile? You can only get wisdom by talking to them more, try to find their pain point, try to find something that, again, is a human interaction. But again, like I said, impact investing is not for the faint-hearted people. You need to be able to extend a lot of heart attack potential. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Right. So really reviewing the company's ecosystem is also. Oh, you have one question? Okay.
Sorry. Well, based on your response, I just wanted to ask a very quick question. So you were sitting in front of the family foundation of the family. Somebody saying that I want my 20% IRR, and somebody says, I think we should be doing this because these are issues that are compelling and important in our world. How do you actually address that in a balanced fashion? I mean, this would be a real issue.
Yeah. So, fact number one, you cannot be both profit maximizing and impact maximizing at the same time. If any banker, sorry if I offend you, promise that the product, come and see me. I want to know how they do it. So for us, we are looking target our IRR, or I won't say IRR, it's a very strong term. We target at a below market return. We are looking at 8 to 12% at the end of maybe 7 years. Market return is 15 to 20, 25. But we don't want to overcommit and under-deliver, right? Again, it's about portfolio management. And so there's no magic number, honestly. No magic number. But the fact is, you cannot expect market return. That is what I'm trying to commit. I don't want to oversell my products, oversell my performance, but you just have to find a balance, right? Because, okay, here are 3 facts that drives me to do this. Number 1, despite the 4 Asian tigers being benefit of economic prosperity in the 1990s, the gap between the rich and the poor is widening. In Indonesia, 5% of the population own 90% of the nation's wealth. Okay, there's a fact. And number 2, charity is not going to change that. Charity is not going to change the lives of the poor people. They still need jobs, they don't need handout. Okay? And number 3 is, do you know 70% of the Asian population make less than 1 cup of Starbucks every day? So what does that say? Okay, what this means to me is there's an increased social tension. Social tension invites terrorism. So it's not the problem of the government. It's the problem of enterprises making too much money. Again, I'm not saying making profit is evil. Greed is evil.
So at RAISE, we actually had a family foundation together with the family office approaching us. The family foundation side wanted to actually donate, basically provide a grant to the social enterprise. We decided to speak to the family office side and told them, hey, look, we know you have a portfolio. Really, the portfolio is really just the typical corporate portfolio where your IRRs are really high. We actually managed to convince them that, how about just investing in the social enterprise? Don't give it grants. Don't use your family foundation arm to invest in it. But how about, like what Mason mentioned, get a lower returns and see how it works. So within a family office, there can be some form of, it really depends on the weightage of your portfolio. Maybe 70 to 80% of it can still be the traditional form of equity investments. But a small percentage of it you can still try. Slowly by slowly, whether or not impact investment actually works, then over time they could maybe transform their portfolio. So you do it at incremental steps when you advise the family office. And we're seeing this at RAISE also, where the Community Foundation Singapore is actually directing some family offices to us, and we provide some form of advisory to them.
So let me add on. I have seen cases where to settle that dispute, they will divide to 2 pot of funds, 50% grant, 50% impact investing. So you know why? People who are used to grant do not know how to review investment proposal. People who look at investment proposal don't know how to look at charity projects. So they need 2 group of people to make everybody happy, right?
Chia, you have any comments? I'd like to hear from you.
Share.
All right, so in the interest of time, I think it has been a great panel session, and I'd just like to end off with something that I've learned. Really, give a man a fish and you feed him a day. Okay, thank you, because the other time I shared that with a group of secondary school students, and they said, give a man a fish and you feed him a fish. Right? and he wasn't wrong, right? The answer wasn't wrong, but yes. So give a person a fish, you feed the person a day. Teach and you feed for life. However, being able to fish doesn't mean that this person is able to get out of poverty. And this is really something that I've learned when I was in China, where people had to sell their blood to, not to make ends meet, but to live life a little bit better. And I think here we're trying to be probably even level 3, to create a platform, right, where people can sell the fish and hopefully get out of poverty. And with this, Thank you very much for your time, and I'll now hand back to Mandy. Thank you. Thank you, panelists.